a Shinnyo-en Buddhist practitioner, a professional funeral celebrant, a spiritual director, and the father of 2 amazing young adult children. He loves to write, backpack, meditate, run, laugh, learn, and create memories in partnership with his significant other, Susan. He is dedicated to living life fully and helping others do the same. Daryl is very active, and we are glad that he has joined us today at Tapestry.
It's such an honor to be here with you this morning. I don't know that you can fully grasp how freeing it is as someone who spent 30 years in ministry in various Christian contexts to have an opportunity to preach to a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Normally, I have to be very, very careful to frame anything that I bring from outside the Christian tradition in such a way that my audience can receive it without feeling threatened. It's so wonderful to have an audience that I know I would have to work very, very hard to threaten. I am fascinated by the human desire to perceive a power greater than ourselves. In the many different ways the human beings have perceived the presence of something greater than themselves, the presence both within them and around them, a presence that binds them to all that is, to one another, and pulls them into an ever-expansive view. I think it's worthwhile to look back and to recognize some of the ways that various philosophies, various religious outlooks, various social movements have invited us into a deeper awareness. Early Western philosophers invited us to put some energy into understanding good. In Platonism, the meaning of life is in attaining the highest form of knowledge, which is the idea or the form of good, from which all good and just things derive their value. Aristotle came along and offered us or invited us to take another step, not just to understand good, but in being good, to pursue the highest good. Aristotle's really the first one who introduces us to praxis, Praxis, to live into the notion of good. Stoicism invited us to move from being good to pursuing liberty, to being free. Teaches us that living according to reason and virtue is to be in harmony with the universe's divine order. Freedom from suffering comes through being objective and having clear perception. And in the East, Lao Tzu, often considered the founder of Taoism, invites us to live in harmony, to recognize the original force that shaped the nature of the universe, and to intuitively experience the laws of nature and to grow in a harmonious existence with those laws. Shakyamuni Buddha teaches us the middle way, which neither is about denying oneself or indulging oneself, but finding the way between those two extremes that embraces the reality of one's true nature and relieves the suffering of all sentient beings by living into this middle way. And in all the schools of Hinduism, we are invited to embrace liberation, not just for ourselves, but for all living things. Hinduism invites us to consider the concept of karma, causal action, samsara, the cycle of birth and rebirth, and moksha, liberation. We are invited to recognize the opportunity we have to progress into deeper and deeper awareness of who we are, of all that is. And in the process of that awareness, to be freed, to be liberated from the cycle of rebirth. And in the midst of all of this awareness, we get this idea of divine presence. We begin to use the word God. Many of us have stopped using that word because we feel that it's accumulated too much baggage. And so we toss the word aside rather than trying to free it from some of its baggage and breathe new life into it. I think it worthwhile to step back and consider this word and what people meant when they used that word. In Judaism, the notion of God is the transcendent other, the one who is always apart from and beyond understanding of humanity. Except for mystical practices within Judaism, Judaism goes to great lengths, and many of its most well-known teachers strive to make clear the infinity of the divine and the finitude of the human. And that the task of religion is to help the finite meet the infinite without ever becoming a part of the infinite, always bound to its finiteness, and yet reaching to touch, to understand, to appreciate the infiniteness of the divine. Christianity, as it has come to be defined in Orthodox circles and lately in more evangelical circles, takes the idea of humankind's estrangement from infinite God through humankind's actions, sin, if you will, and sees Jesus as the object or the instrument of reconciliation with the divine through the forgiveness of sins gained by Jesus' death on a cross as an atoning sacrifice for a God who demands sacrifice for atonement. Progressive Christians have rejected this view and see Jesus rather as revealing the divine alignment with and revelation in and through humanity. So what I'm saying there, those are a lot of big words. Jesus is seen as we see in Jesus, we see the divine expressed through humanity. So no longer this idea of the infinite above and the finite below and never quite touching, but the idea that the divine is expressed in and through humanity. That the incarnation, the indwelling of the divine in Jesus is something that is happening through all of humanity. And human beings are invited to recognize and to open themselves to be the conduits of the divine to one another and to the world. Progressive Christians focus on Jesus' commands for disciples to love one another. They see their role as co-creating a just world where all human beings recognize their oneness with each other. Islam centers its teachings around the worship of the one true Almighty God of the universe. Not just as something you do, but as the primary goal or aim in life. For one's life to be an act of worship, an act of total surrender, submission, obedience, purity of heart, and peace. All of this together is the very definition of the Arabic word Islam. Those who dedicate their lives to performing these actions are called Muslims. Muslims. Literally, Islamers. To a Muslim, the whole purpose of life is ibadah, or worship of the one true Almighty God on God's terms and conditions. Transcendentalism invites us into the simple perception of natural forms as a delight in themselves. Transcendentalism invites us through the body and the mind to appreciate the beauty that is all around us, within us, and permeates all that is. Emerson develops the notion of an oversoul that can be comprehended either through an inward search for one's spiritual nature or by communing with nature as a whole, which is infiltrated with God's overwhelming presence. The purpose of life, says Emerson, is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you lived and lived well. Judy Garland had perhaps a more poetic way of saying it. She said, always be a first-rate version of yourself instead of a second-rate version of somebody else. And I think what Judy Garland captures there is the universal truth of all religious and philosophical thought. As I dived into this idea of how humanity has come to recognize the divine and how humanity has come to articulate that recognition and invite others into it, and how humanity has drawn from that a sense of purpose. I was really looking for, when you get down beneath all our different vocabularies, different approaches, different rituals, what's at the core of the best human philosophy and religious thought? And I have to tell you, my bias, probably coming out of my Christian training, was that at its core, what we would find is love and a command to love one another. But that's not really what I found. What I found is a little broader than that. It seems that philosophical and religious thought all point to the same fundamental truth, but it's a truth that invites us not so much into love, but into authenticity. It seems that when human beings search with all they have into the best way to live into who we are, what we find is that the answer is to recognize our extraordinarily unique expression and to live into it as fully as we possibly can. To be who we are, for Daryl to be Daryl, and to recognize that that is the one thing I can do that no one else can do. I can't truly love you or love anything else until I have come to love the extraordinary, unique expression that is me. and to live into that as fully as I can. When I am not concerned with hitting a particular standard, when I am not concerned with meeting a particular expectation, but I am concerned only with being authentic, then I can come to appreciate the amazing authenticity, the amazing expression that is you. I can appreciate you being authentic. I don't need to measure you against anything else, evaluate you, determine whether you're loving your neighbor or being an expression of love to the standard that I might set, but simply to be a person who does what human beings can do in a way that no other created reality does. We are the expression, the divine expression, of one of the greatest words in the English language. It sounds the same whether you say it forwards or backwards. It is expressed in all different kinds of words in every holy manuscript. This amazing word is wow. We are supposed to be the people of wow. And yet, how often are we the people of meh? The people of so what? The people of, oh, I know how they do that. The people of, I've got a bigger one. I've been to a more magnificent place. I've had a more incredible experience. And most of all, my religion is better than yours. I think we need to spend more time with small children. Because small children have not lost touch with the fact that they are the people of wow. Everywhere they go, they do the wow. When's the last time a child brought to you the most amazing thing they'd ever found and said, look at this beautiful flower. Wow! And they hand you a dandelion. And if they've really discovered the secret of dandelions, they've carefully carried one to you that's just about ready to burst. And they tell you, I want you to blow this one. They want you to have the privilege of the wow of and just watching the dandelion disperse everywhere. The challenge for us is to be so captivated by beauty, so captivated by this incredible universe, so captivated by each other, so captivated by ourselves that we walk around all the time as the people of wow, who just can't get over how amazing this experience of life really is. It's easy to be cynical. It's easy to be superior, which is really an expression of inferiority. It's easy to think that ours is better. And the greatest way to destroy another person's wow is by suggesting to them that in the context of all the wow in the world, theirs is no big deal. To listen to a devout Jew tell us about an experience of the transcendent in which they came so close to touching the ultimate. When their finitude felt lifted up beyond their own limitations and they could almost touch the source of all that is, the best response is not to tell them how that's echoed in Hinduism and in Buddhism and in Christianity and in Stoicism and in Transcendentalism, so that we can take their wow and say, see, it's really not that big a deal. We've all been there. And if you were as enlightened as me, you would appreciate all the wow, not just your little wow. The challenge for us is to be the one who walks into the rose garden with a group of people who, like us, are all rose lovers. And when someone calls out to us, come over here, look at this one, wow. Or another calls out to us and says, come over here and smell this one, wow. To be the one who comes to where they beckon us, bends over, looks or smells the incredible rose to which they have pointed, and says, wow. Without making a comparison to all the other roses. Without saying, yeah, look at this one, and look at that one, and look at this one. But to take the moment to drink in the wow that person has invited us to experience it, without comparing it, without doing anything other than being fully present to them and their wow. I think if Unitarian Universalists have anything to offer that is spectacular, that other faiths cannot offer, is to be the great witnesses to the wow. And instead of trying to point out all of the wow that is around us, to be the ones who will stand with anyone, no matter their background, no matter their experience, no matter their religious or philosophical expression, when that person comes in touch with the great I am, whatever vocabulary they might use to describe it, and beckons us over and says, look at this, smell this, drink this in, that we can be the people who will say, wow. Yeah. I can so appreciate the beauty you've discovered, the magnificence of your faith, the transcendence of your thought. Thank you for sharing the holy with me. I invite you to tell one another and to tell me, as the people of wow, where you last or where you most significantly experienced the great I am. What is the word that you would use for that experience? What is the place that you experience a power greater than yourself? It may be the name of another human being. It may be the name of a place. It may be a traditional word used for the divine. It may be a name of an emotion. It may be a word that stands for you as one that awakens the wow in your life. But I invite you just to name out loud, shout it out, a word that awakens the great I am in your life. And let's just allow those to rain down on us and to share in each other's. Wow. So what is your word? Peace be with you. Shalom. Salam. Namaste.